Okay, thank you attendees for joining us today. We are privileged to have Dr. Robert Long here with Raise Your Hand Texas. He'll be presenting on rising to the challenge, kind of what life is like with COVID-19 and public education, and maybe what we can expect in the future in regards to Raise Your Hand Texas and their support for public education. Just to give you a quick bio of Dr. Long before I hand it over to him, he is currently transitioning from his voluntary role as an alumni regional director into his current role as regional advocacy director at Raise Your Hand Texas Foundation. Robert will work to develop and support grassroots advocacy efforts in the West Houston area, which is evidenced by the partnerships that he's had with our association, the Decatur Area Chamber, and various associations on the West Side with some of our candidates forums and educational support. Dr. Long comes to the foundation with 21 years in public education, having served as a campus principal at both the elementary and secondary levels. He was appointed to the Texas School Board Safety Center Board of Directors by Governor Greg Abbott in 2016, and most recently served as vice chair of the board during the 86th legislative session. He also serves as an adjunct professor of epistemology and qualitative research methods in the Department of Education Leadership at the University of Houston. With that being said, Dr. Long, this is yours.
Well, wow, good morning. And thank you, Matthew. Happy anniversary to you as your CEO. And to all my guests, I can't see your faces, but I'm super excited that you took time out of your day so that we could engage in this presentation, discourse, and reflection on not only to the pieces that Matthew was speaking about, specifically around COVID-19, but also you guys getting sort of a snapshot of our organization and the work that we've been doing during this time to sort of gear up for the 87th legislative session around COVID-19. So yes, right. So we're going to jump right in. I'm sorry.
Real quick, I'm sorry. If anybody has any questions throughout today's presentation, please add them to the chat section and we'll be sure to get those answered by the end of the presentation.
Yes, thank you, Matthew, for
yes,
that.
Yes, sir. Sorry, go ahead. I'm going on mute now.
Yeah, I get steamrolling, and so it's good to slow me down. So yes, please, we do want your feedback because Raise Your Hand Texas is about building coalitions among our community leaders, business leaders, and local school districts. So it's very important to get feedback around what our 10-year priorities are. So when just talking about the current situation, the context to which we live in today, you know, nobody really signed up for this. You know, not for online classes, not for teaching remotely, not for learning from home, or even mastering new technologies. But we know that the human option is the best option. And so we're going to continue to prioritize supporting each other as humans. And, you know, we cannot, but at the same time, you know, we can't do the same things that we've been doing online as it relates to public schooling. You know, some assignments are no longer possible. Some things are no longer reasonable. We know that right now our seniors are really having a challenge and a struggle because all their benchmarks for life, such as prom and high school graduations, have been modified. Either they're canceled or they're up in the air. But, and this sort of shapes the narrative around public education thus far. I don't think anyone is surprised at the tremendous impact that COVID-19 has had on schools, but the response that that school districts have really rose to the challenge of supporting and showing their true worth in a community. So we are only at the beginning of the work through the impact that this is having on public schools and public school families as schools close, whether it's basic life needs such as childcare, nutrition, changes in how we provide students with continuity instruction, or you know what we're going to do about, again, testing and graduation and the impact on the state's workforce economy. Is still things that are unknown or still unraveling today. Due to businesses closures in March and beyond, the state will be well below state revenue estimates because, you know, most of our budget comes from, for the state's revenue comes from sales tax. And of course, we know property taxes, but also mainly sales tax. And those have been significantly impacted due to COVID-19. And so, you know, at the beginning of this whole thing, the government, the Texas Department of Agriculture and TEA got together to first figure out how are they going to feed all those kids who are school dependent on nutrition. And so 60% of our students across the state, roughly 3 million kids out of the 5.4 million are eligible for free or reduced lunch. So that was the first piece that started really ramping up in our response. And then, of course, it's up to school districts in order to still fully fund and keep all their teachers and staff members employed. There has to be insurance of instructional continuity. So this is when you saw districts like Katy ISD and Fort Bend providing Wi-Fi, getting laptops out, really shifting their instructional paradigm to support these efforts to ensure that they were able to employ teachers and continue to pay for all those services that everyone in the district has, but also making sure that online learning systems can support different learning and teaching needs. So school funding is still flowing. If schools agree to provide continued education during instructional closings. This is an issue that is certainly evolving, and TO has given some guidance about expectations on minutes of operation, access to learning, attendance, school privacy, and continuity of programs such as pre-K. It is a stressful time, but it is also a time to be grateful for the 350 plus teachers and the 300,000 additional public school employees that are shifting to meet the needs of our students and communities. So our state leaders have assured us that they will be fully funded. This comes from House Speaker Dennis Bonnen. This quote comes from him. That being said, this is unprecedented, and it will not be business as usual during the next legislative session. Issues around the coronavirus, budgetary pressures, health and human service funding will take center stage. In addition, the census is underway, which means redistricting will be a distraction for next season. However, for schools in particular, there will be lots and lots of questions. So we see, what are parents concerned about? Well, on the issue of testing, as you probably heard, the governor waived STAR assessment and some of the graduation requirements that will impact the students this year. This is relief, but what does this mean moving forward? What does this mean for our current accountability system, the A through F model? How do we meaningfully measure student growth? And did we need this assessment in the first place? And should we use other indicators to measure our student success? We know that there are also impacts on other assessments as well. You know, the ACT college admissions test scheduled for April 4th has been rescheduled to June 13th. The SAT canceled its exam for May 2nd and will refund money to students. But we also have AP, which schools or districts are currently grappling with as well. So we see that COVID really has shifted our paradigm, and what we anticipated the 87th legislative session was going to be, and now has really put us in really an unprecedented time in our history. So I'm going to take a moment to stop and discuss a few things that may be facing your district. At Raise Your Hand Texas, the impact of COVID-19 can be seen in all of our policy areas. And so I'm going to give you a little overview of Raise Your Hand Texas as an organization, and so that you can, if you're not familiar, you can get familiarized, or if you are familiar, can like refresh some of your understanding of what the work that we do. And so this is a really an outline or pictograph of all of our work, the entire body of our work. So Raise Your Hand Texas is a nonprofit organization that creates programs, invests in research, develops policy, and supports advocacy to solve the complex issues surrounding public education on various fronts. We are fully funded by our founder, Charles Butt, who, if you don't know, is the CEO of HEB. He fully funds us because he believes that the future of Texas is in our public schools. And so, as you can see, these are our programs across. And so, if you don't know, we have a strong policy shop in Austin. We also have a team of lobbyists that solely work focused on education. We have a robust marketing and storytelling department, and you'll see some of their work throughout this presentation. We also have a very well-respected research, program evaluation, public perception polling, and policy research development. Most of you probably are familiar with our programs. Our blended learning program provides over $900,000 to a district to bring the best of technology and combine it with the best of basic instructional practices. Our Raising School Leaders is our most prominent program. We have over 1,300 alumni who are sitting principals who are sent to Harvard for 2 weeks for the best professional development in the world. We have our Raising Family Partnerships, which works with school districts, community leaders, parents, and Harvard to build strong family engagement systems within a district. And then we have our Raising Texas Teachers program, which is the Charles Butt Scholarship Program, which is $8,000 per year, up to $32,000 for high school seniors and current college students who just say they want to be teachers. And so this is such a big, important program to Charles Butt that he put his name on it. So after the last 86 legislative session, Raise Your Hand Texas did a lot of behind the scenes work in building coalitions around full day pre-K. Once that passed, that was the sign for Charles to really expand to provide school districts, local businesses, and community leaders with a on-the-ground community organizer in the form of a regional advocacy director. And so there were 13 of us hired overnight, not really overnight. It was a good 4 to 6 months interview process, but overnight, 13 of us was hired around the state. And so I am your representative for the West Houston area. So I'm going to talk a little bit about each of the programs, starting with our Raising Texas Teachers, I'm sorry. So Raising Texas Teachers was created to really elevate the teaching profession across the state through partnerships in higher education, scholarships for aspiring teachers, and a campaign to elevate the status of teaching profession across the state. We have provided about 250 scholarships and we partner with 10 universities, and each scholarship can receive up to $10,000 a year. We do have a mandate for next year to get that up to 500 recipients. So this is a $50 million initiative designed to grow our current pool of quality applicants, to advance the teaching preparation and teaching profession, and to elevate the appeal and respect for the teaching profession. Our next programming that's most well known, and actually is how I got involved with Raise Your Hand Texas. I was honored to be able to go to Harvard 2 times as a participant, but then became a Harvard facilitator for 4 years, going and being able to work with Harvard graduate staff as well as the principals. But through the Raising School Leaders, Harvard invests in leadership developing, coaching, and school turnaround programs that helps our state's public school leaders become stronger educators. We have sent over 1,300 school leaders to the Harvard Graduate School of Education program for a 2-week-long summer program. This was our first program and continues to work to improve educational leadership in our state at no cost to the district. And once you are a member, you are an alumnus. And so every year we have a leadership symposium that is fully funded by Raise Your Hand Texas at no cost to the district, where they continue to receive training. Our Raising Blended Learners program is more than 35,000 students that have already been a part of this program. We just added 20 new districts to the program. I think the nearest one here is one of my districts is Tomball. Just received this, and we're excited that House Bill 3 has provided $6 million per year funding additionally for blended learning programs, building on Raise Your Hand Texas funded grants. So a lot of the TEA grants that, like the MIS grant, the Math Innovation Grant, were all built around our Raising Blended Learners program. And so I talked a little bit about my role. So there's 13 of us across the state, and our whole role is really just to be a connector between business, the community, and schools, and to their state and locally elected officials. And so we were hired on in August, really hit the ground in our territory in November with the task of doing something called 40 by 42, which had never been done, which was to have, 40 by February, which was to have 40 candidate forums across the state with focused conversations around public education. And so through the candidate forums, voter turnout events, and other engagement efforts, we are here to inform the public about the issues facing our schools and share our organization's policy efforts and help shift the narrative around public education. And so I'm proud to say that the Katy Area Chamber was a partner in one of these 42 events where we had 42 events, 105 candidates, over 20,000 live screens, over 3,194 attendees. And so the data that we collected, we know how every candidate, however, every elected official responded to the 4 state questions, because we asked the same questions across the state that was specifically around public education. First of all, in many areas there had never been a nonpartisan candidate forum, which was a first. and there had never been a candidate forum solely focused on public education. And so this was a big splash for us getting these efforts out, and we're looking to do more in the general. We're currently talking about maybe doing those in this form and format as well. But because of this, we have really bridged the connection. I would like to thank Matthew for his partnership, because we were able to engage with Representative Gates, and as a result of us getting him to come to a candidate forum, he has now worked with 3 different school districts to host over 6 distribution drives of N95 masks, hand sanitizer, alcohol, and a disinfectant to over 20,000 homes. And that's all because of the connection we made with our candidate forum. Another thing I would like to talk to us about, and I can definitely send this to Matthew so he can send out to any folks who are interested in this information, is that in February, we released our inaugural poll about Texans' attitudes towards public education. We used the same firm that conducts annual national PDK poll of the public's attitudes towards public schools. No other state in the country is regularly polling about public education on an annual basis. We used a random sampling of more than 1,000 Texans. The survey was conducted in both English and Spanish and weighted to be proportionally demographically to the 2018 US Census data, as well as Texas political party affiliation. So it was conducted by Lingua Research. We're gonna do this every year because we hear that a lot of legislators get misinformation about what they think, how Texans feel about public education, because they may have heard from that one loud voice in their community. But this actually gives us actual factual perceptions of how folks view our schools. And so if you look at this national perception slide, national polling has shown that attitudes about the biggest problems facing our public schools have evolved over time. Recently, we decided to do an annual poll and to track a study of what Texas thinks, so that we could do a better job of understanding what some of the pressures and some of the thoughts are around public education in our own state. Our hope is that we can be used to inform the work as well as the work of others to describe both the bright spots and the challenges that public schools face. And so if you see here, our polls show that the biggest problems facing public schools have to do with funding. See conversations around, you'll notice Texans perceive issues around lack of funding, teacher quality, there are student issues, and these are aligned with the work that we are committed to and working on. So our concerns at Raise Your Hand Texas are the same as Texans' concerns. And so this goes into our we believe. So our long-term policy statement is that we believe the organizational values of Raise Your Hand Texas are rooted in creating a world-class school system that fuels a brighter future for all Texans. For this reason, we have established 7 core policy priorities, our true north, that will guide our long-term work in supporting public schools in Texas. So our first of that is that public dollars must remain in public schools. We believe that Raise Your Hand Texas was first of all created to oppose vouchers or any other form of diversion of public education forms to private schools, which are not required to serve all students, nor are they accountable for meeting the same educational standards. We will impose any form of voucher program or tax credit scholarship to pilot programs for any specific types of students. And at this time, when people are going to be talking about online systems, we need to make sure that they are high quality. And that goes to where we stand. This is our first stance. We support keeping public education tax dollars in public schools and investing in quality choice and innovative programs within Texas public schools. We also believe that money matters in education. A robustly funded public education system is fundamental to every child, educator, and community reaching its full potential. So Raise Your Hand Texas believes that continuing to invest in public education, and every session should be a pro-public education session. So House Bill 3, we love House Bill 3. It was a great first step, and it's gonna fund us this year and the next. But overall, it still did not move us from the bottom of the top 10 states out of our country in per student funding. While the COVID crisis is certainly going to impact funding, our states need to ensure that House Bill 3 is fully funded and has a sustainable revenue structure so it can continue to provide the promised education programs and tax relief. Some of House Bill 3 was funded in the last legislation, but some of that was left for this legislative session pre-COVID. So that's something that we're going to definitely be keeping our eyes on. And so where we stand here is that Texas should continue to invest in our students and address the issue of long-term sustainability with the goal of reaching at least the national average in per student funding. And so if you look at our stances on school finance, it is in alignment with our Texans Trust Teachers poll. Texans see a lack of school funding as the biggest problem facing Texas public schools. 59% of Texans say that schools in the community have too little money. And I know the majority of Texans, 62%, say that they would actually support raising taxes to improve public schools. Partisanship and ideology are the biggest factors in views on raising taxes. The idea is supported by 70% of Democrats and 63% of independents compared to 48% of Republicans, as you can see on the graph here. Our next priority is that teachers make a difference. We believe that all students need access to high quality teachers for our state to succeed. Districts such as Katy have had a tradition of excellence because they've had really amazing teachers and they've had the ability to keep those teachers in their district. And so at Raise Your Hand Texas, we want to make sure that we continue to support districts that can keep that happening. Our teacher poll slide, Texans have trust and confidence for public school teachers at a significantly higher rate than most Americans nationally. 77% of Texans express that they trust and have confidence in their teachers versus 61% of all Americans. 93% of Texans believe that the quality of teacher is extremely important or very important to school quality. 66% of Texans and 71% of their parents give either their schools an A or B, while 71% of Texans believe that teachers are undervalued in our society. 70% of Texans believe that salaries for teachers are too low, and 52% of Texans would not like their child to become a teacher. And so for us, that becomes a very concerning statistic. Like, how can we reshape the profession so it is an attractive career? So this time especially, I think everyone is starting to really understand the value of teaching. Being parents at home and having to educate your child is really a struggle. And you can see this reflected through social media. You have John Chandler from NBC, homeschooling has begun here. And all I can say is that with absolute conviction that teachers should be paid like a CEO. You have Shonda Rhimes, who is the creator of Scandal, who says, I've been homeschooling my 6-year-old and 8-year-old for an hour and 11 minutes. Teachers deserve to make $1 billion a year or a week. So we understand the value of what teachers bring to our family. But the challenge is that almost a third of our new Texas teachers, almost 12,000 plus, leave the profession after the 5th year of teaching. This creates strain not only for students who need highly effective teachers, but it also creates a financial burden on school districts up to $20,000 per teacher in order to provide new teachers with high quality preparation, insurance, healthcare benefits, and professional development. To meet the growing needs of an increasingly diverse student population, Texas needs to do a better job of both recruiting and retaining teachers. We need to support aspiring teachers at the state level with loan forgiveness, scholarships, mentorship programs, and residency programs that allow them to be effective teachers on day one. We need to provide funding for those entering the profession after other careers that have the opportunity to a strong start through residency and student teaching. We need to seriously take a look at legislation and rules that allow for certain certification to only have 15 hours of training in a classroom setting, some only online prior to becoming a teacher of record. Retain. Texas has about 350,000 teachers. As of 17-18, Texas ranked 27th in the nation as it relates to teacher salaries, an average of $53,334 compared to the national average, which is $60,477. We need to make sure that our school districts have the ability to provide annual cost of living increases for our teachers and staff. We need to provide ongoing, effective professional development and growth opportunities for our veterans. We also need to support research-based improvements in our Texas teacher preparation programs and strict accountability for those programs. Potential teacher candidates must have access to transparent information about the outcomes at each program. Our Raising Texas Teachers initiative guides our definition of high-quality teacher preparation program and the standards to which they are. Deliver a competency-based program that includes relevant course of study, substantial clinical preparation component, use of data, a continuous program improvement, and a strong collaborative relationship with school districts and universities. So, as a reminder, these are our 10-year priorities. So, where we stand, Texas should make it easier to attract and retain new teachers. Aspiring teachers should have access to high-quality preparation programs, as well as scholarship and loan forgiveness programs. So our fourth 10-year priority is serving the whole child while promoting learning. We believe that every Texas student deserves an education that serves the whole child, and that our state should continue to expand eligibility for students to attend full-day pre-K. If you didn't know it or not, we do have full-day pre-K, but not all students fall under that umbrella. You have to meet a social, emotional, and financial level in order for your child to qualify, meaning they have to be at risk or have low SES to qualify free and reduced lunch, but not for all students. We're pushing for all students to receive pre-K intervention and services. And this is consistent with our data. So the Annie E. Casey Foundation Kids Count data book from 2019 rates Texas as 41st overall in child well-being. This accounts for economic well-being, education, health, and family and community factors. It also takes into account and consideration children in poverty, household employment, students not graduating on time, student without insurance, and parent educational attainment. Texas had made many great strides in our funding formulas under the new spectrum rate. We now provide additional funds for students that need based on the numerous census indicators. In addition to the expansion of pre-K eligibility and strengthening our pre-K quality standards, Texas should expand and invest in programs that develop students' social, emotional, and mental health needs. Again, COVID-19 impacts this policy as well. How do we meet the needs of the whole child and ensure that we are better prepared to do so in times such as these? And that goes to where we stand statement. Texas should meet the individual needs of each student through expansion of pre-K, eligibility, and improved quality standards. Texas should also invest in programs that develop social emotional skills and address our mental health needs. And this again is consistent with our poll. Increasingly, 81% of Texans believe that teaching students self-management, interpersonal, and decision-making skills is the most important school quality outcome for students, placing it above measures as college and career readiness and standardized testing participation. 65% of Texans and 73% of public school parents believe that pre-K programs help students enter kindergarten ready to learn. Our next priority is around student assessment. Student growth and performance should be measured fairly. We believe one test on one day informing how we view our students' academic success is not the best approach. Our parents and communities need to view the entirety of our child's education and look at other indicators like progress, project-based instruction, the number of students taking advanced courses, and extracurricular activities to fully measure the success of our students. And so our star poll slide of our Texans poll, Texans identify standardized test pressure as the top challenge facing teachers. 93% of them say that it is a challenge or major challenge. 49% are confident that the state letter grades accurately. Only 49% feel like that the state ratings accurately reflect the quality of their school. And 85% of Texans believe it is better to measure student learning over time than on one single test on a single day. So I'm not sure if you're aware, but in grades 3 through 8, STAR is the only indicator of student success. In high school, STAR assessment, graduation rates, and college, career, and military readiness are added to the mix. But my question to you is, does this really fairly measure student success and growth for all our students? Issues such as readability of the test, and whether it's on grade level, teaching to the test anxiety of students, over testing, and not being able to identify the strong correlations between the standards and the poverty need to be reevaluated. Again, COVID-19 is going to have an impact. And as I said in earlier terms, building a better assessment and accountability needs to happen moving forward. So where we stand is real-time assessments that inform instruction and measure individual student progress should be one of several measures used by an accountability system that reflects the entire educational experience. Our priority 6 is really around local control. We believe that in autonomy and a level playing field for all public schools, we must ensure policies treat all public school students fairly, and that our educators and our school administrators have a voice and representation at the Texas Legislature. We believe that local leaders know their school districts the best and their community the best and are best equipped to make those decisions. The other piece is not all public schools in Texas are treated the same. Students in urban and suburban school districts receive about $1,100 less through state funding formulas than charter schools. This can be seen through incentive school districts now receive if their school boards decide to partner with a charter school, nonprofit, or governmental entity. Our state policies should take a closer look at funding differences, enrollment practices, and other inefficiencies of parallel systems. This includes duplicate facilities within close proximity. So charter schools such as KIPP, IDEA that are moving into our area, they don't have to report their funding to a local board. It's not an adequate funding. We're saying that everything should be on the same field. Charter schools should be held to the same accountability method, both financially and academic, as our public school systems. So all public schools belong on a level playing field that ensures autonomy, equal oversight of spending, enrollment, and the ability to have effective voice at the legislative session. And so our priority number 7, we support and love to showcase innovative learning models and pathways to meet individual student needs. If you have any idea about things happening in your public school area, please share them with me. I know Matthew and I will provide my email and contact so that we can spread the word, because we have a great marketing team that really does a great job of showcasing positive things happening in our school districts. The challenge is we need to do more to ensure that Texas can meet the demands of our employers. This shows that Texas is lagging far behind when it comes to producing the highly educated workforce that our state demands. This is going to be even more important as we recover from the effects of COVID-19. If the next legislative session does not end up focusing on higher education, as some have said, we hope that our Texas legislation continues to fund and expand programs that help students transition into college, into a career or technical skill, and or military. These include dual credit, CTE programs, blended learning models, as well as continued support for SAT, ACT preparation. This is concerns that our new Commissioner of Higher Ed, we shouldn't stop. We should continue to work and push so that adults can achieve any sort of post-secondary certificate or degree while they're in high school. And this goes along with where we stand. We support relevant learning models to pathways to meet individual student needs, as well as increased support for transitioning into college, career, and or military. Oh, and I'm going to apologize for this. When I did the Google transfer into a PowerPoint, I lost my numbers, but these are overview of our policy brief. So the first one is public dollars must remain in public schools. Money matters in education. Teachers making a difference, serving the whole child that supports and promotes learning. Students should be fairly measured. Local control, Texas communities know their kids the best, and prepared students to ensure a brighter future. Because at the end of the day, we know that the future of Texas is in our public schools. And so Don't know if you guys are aware, but last evening we had our Toast to Texas Teachers event, which is about another initiative, which is our Teachers Can campaign. So this is a Texas-sized year-long celebration and teaching in 2020, and we hope that you guys will be inspired to join. All our partners, all you have to do is go to the website. You can add your logo. There's no cost. You can just say you joined a movement to support teachers. This is a generous partnership with the Dallas-based Riches Group, one of the top advertising agencies in the country. We begin to explore what it would take to raise the profile of teaching as a profession. And so when you take a look around the conversation that's happening within and about teaching pre-COVID, you saw a lot of negativity and deficit instead of pride and importance in the community. And so we wanted to make sure that we could do something to really change this narrative. And then COVID-19 happened, and we started to see all these shout outs and celebrations of teachers, you know, but we really want to give teachers the power to own the impact and tell their stories and making a difference. The very selfless act of what they do, making them great teachers, you know, really preclude them from giving themselves their own credit. So our nemesis was those who can do teach and those who can't, you know, don't teach. And we wanted to take control and reappropriate this, this conversation around showing what it meant to be a teacher and what teachers really do. And so I'm going to try to show this video that the Richards Group, and we really want it to go viral. This is, you're gonna continue to see spots in the coming months around this. And so I'm gonna see if I can get this going.
They say those who can't teach, and they're right. Those who can't ignore a child's burning curiosity about the world. Those who can't allow a single kid to quietly slip through the cracks. Those who can't let children be bullied into feeling like they're worthless. Those who can't allow the great works of literature to collect dust. Those who can't leave history in the past. Those who can't sit idly by when there's a calling to do something that's much more than a job. Those who can't let Texas fall behind. Teach.
And so we're trying to work to really equip teachers to make their own impact. And so you will see on the Teachers Can website, you can see Instagram posts, social media. There's been a lot. Last night we had the HEB Excellence Awards, where we did a Toast to Texas, and we announced the HEB Excellence and Award winners that received, it was over $1 million in awards, cash awards and prizes. But Matthew McConaughey was a part of it. Scott McKellen, who runs the Houston division of HEB, emceed, and it really all just to celebrate teachers. And we have been on the website have been having nominations. You're going to see a lot of this signage going around, and it's all attached to our Teacher Can efforts. You won't see Raise Your Hand Texas on it because we really wanted to be an organic campaign where folks take their own ownership of it. But as you see it, you will know that it is connected. And so I will say, although I did miss, I will say if you are interested in learning more about Raise Your Hand Texas and you would like to get alerts, they're not annoying, we are very consistent, but even during the legislative session around what bills are impacting your local school communities, please scan this QR code right now, QR code, and become a supporter. And you'll get our newsletter. And you can also text Raise My Hand to 40649 so that we can enroll you and you can be a supporter. And I think, Matthew, I'm ready for questions.
Fantastic. Thank you. One question was if you could share the link to the Teachers Can so people can join.
Sure.
If you can either send that to me or add it to the web chat, I'm going to send out the presentation as well to those that have requested it. One of the questions that we received prior to the presentation was that they recently read an opinion piece that said Texas had not truly embraced online learning before COVID and was behind other states getting students and teachers prepared for online experience. Is there anything we're doing to be forward thinking regarding technology and education? And is that in the wheelhouse of Raise Your Hand Texas?
Well, I think that's an amazing question. I can't answer for the rest other states. I can say for Texas, you know, one of the pieces that Raise Your Hand Texas has really been pushing is this conversation around innovation and integration of technology, hence our blended learning initiative. And although we did not, this has really forced districts to really start thinking about those pieces and making sure that even this summer, most of the districts, all the 16 districts in my region, if you watch their board hearings and board meetings, they really are having conversation about how can we really amp up and ramp up instructional support in this way for remote learning. And even some of the software and technology companies that support school districts were really not prepared for the volume of really going completely online. I think Fort Bend has done an amazing job of really embracing remote learning. Katy has done a great job. Most of our districts in this area have, if they're large districts with that capacity, but if they're a rural district, such as a rural ISD or a smaller district, you know, they like a Sealy ISD, they have sort of struggled because they have not possibly had the funding to roll it out initially. Does that answer?
I think that's a fairly good answer to the question that was suggested. Another one that we have, and if anybody has any further questions, please go ahead and add them to the chat and we'll get them answered. Another question that came through this morning was that they had listened to a podcast on economics regarding the pandemic. There was an economist that pointed out that Americans have a lack of competency to understand and utilize basic data, including government officials. What can we do to better equip students in basic data comprehension and functionality?
Well, I mean, so that's a multi-layered concept. So in order for kids to really understand data, they have to be able to comprehend it, process it, and then synthesize it and apply it in a way to where they can implement practices that make them successful, right? Like that's the whole piece behind data analysis. So I think that becomes where, like, you know, when people are having conversations about if we're going to start the next school year in person or remote, I think the struggle that you're finding is that we really need to have in-person instruction, because you have to have that one-on-one connection with a student to be able to get them to understand the complex nature of how do you break down and really analyze data. And so for me, that's where my thought process goes to.
Okay. And there was a follow-up question to that question. And yet, if we're going to have to rely on video teaching, it will have to be engaging. An article in today's Houston Chronicle highlighted the creative approaches many teachers are improvising under the current situation. Can we employ the arts to come up with creative learning situations that entertain, but more importantly, are engaging and more memorable to the students?
And I think that's what this COVID-19 has really done. I see a lot of, when I'm talking to my assistant suits of curriculum and instruction at all the districts, you know, you have those teachers, and I think this goes back to even our teacher workforce, right? Like teachers who are really passionate about connecting with kids, they're already looking for those ways of connecting. I saw, you know, being in this role has really reconnected me with social media a lot, and we're always looking for teachers doing innovative pieces on social media. And yesterday I ran across a TikTok of this, like, this teacher was definitely my age, but she was doing different TikTok dances based on how many engagement assignments that students had turned in, and how many, you know, if they'd done this, she was going to do this challenge, and it kept her kids engaged and they kept wanting to see her videos. But that was her on her own. So how can we collectively, as school systems and school districts, really look strategically at providing teachers with the skill set to be able to go out of their comfort zone and really create lessons that are engaging, that we're going to have to get better because it's going to be something that we're going to need to be able to prove our relevancy for public school funding.
Great, thank you. it looks like Robert wants to, or Dr. Long wants to address one more quick thing regarding the census. So as he does that, if anybody pops up any more questions, please feel free to add them to the chat. And Dr. Long, please continue.
Yes, and so this is hot off the press. And so I'm not sure if many of you know, but in the last legislative session, the 86th legislative session, there were some laws that were passed that traditionally use different metrics for funding, and they now tied it to census data. And also within that session, there was no funding assigned for outreach or communication of census. And so this is something that has really concerned Raise Your Hand Texas. And I know right now during COVID-19, nobody really wants to talk about census, but I've also had some folks in doing these presentations who would be like, yes, we do want to talk about something different than COVID-19. And so we launched our website specifically on on census 2020 efforts on Friday, and it is live, and I'll include that in a link in the email that I sent to Matthew so you guys can check it out. So our census day was April 1st, and August 14th was the day that so April 1st was census day, so everyone should have received an invitation to respond to the 2020 census. This is not the last day to respond. The U.S. Census Bureau extended the final day to self-respond by July 31st, 2020 to August 14th, 2020, and the Bureau is now trying to get congressional approval to have the deadline extended to October 31st. So in case everyone didn't know, everyone in the U.S. And its 5 territories are required by law to be counted in the 2020 census. The results are used to determine how much local funding receive in key public services and how many seats each state gets in the U.S. Congress. State and local officials also use census counts to draw boundaries for congressional, state legislative, and school districts. When you need to respond, the census, your answers are kept anonymous. They are only used to produce statistics. The U.S. Census Bureau is bound by law to protect your answers and keep them strictly confidential. The law ensures that your private information is never published and that your answers cannot be used against you in any governmental agency or court. And so the Census Bureau temporarily suspended the 2020 census field data collection activities in March. Steps are already being taken to reactivate field offices beginning June 1st in preparation for the resumption of field data collection operations as quickly as June 1. This creates a challenge for us hitting those hard to count communities. And so fortunately, it's never been easier to fill out the census survey. For the first time, the census is allowing people to submit their response online, over the phone, or by physical mail. Respondents can access the online survey, phone numbers, and mailing address by the census website, which is www.2020census.gov. As of May 2020, 46% of the US population has responded through the internet. As of May 2nd, 2020, over 50% of Texans have responded to the census. 42% of them did so online. So Texas is well over the halfway mark, surpassing the 2010 response rate. However, the rate of response is starting to plateau. And so just to give you a little data, so this is from the GW Institute of Public Policy from 2018. In Texas, a 1% undercount in 2020 could cost the state at least $30 million per year over the next decade. And so that's federal funding coming down. This statistic comes from the Urban Institute from 2019. 9% of the hard to count Texans, which is over 500,000, are expected to be missed on the 2020 census, which could again result in a loss of $2.7 billion a year over the next decade. And through the census-based data, Texas received more than $5.4 billion in federal funding in the fiscal year for 2018 for education programs such as free and reduced lunch. And I just would like to remind folks that even during this time, KDISD has been feeding and providing lunch services. A lot of those funds are going to be reimbursed by the federal government because of this data. So Title I grants for school districts, special education grants, and school breakfast program And this is all a part of the Legislative Budget Board report. This also comes from the GW Policy Institute. Studies suggest that school districts can lose approximately $1,700 for every low-income child missed over the 2020 census. So that's so just to let you know, 60% of our 5.4 million kids in Texas, which is 3.6, are economically disadvantaged. And so that's a big chunk of change from the national budget. So to wrap that up, we have a page. I will include that to the link that Matthew's going to send out to everyone. But be looking on social media. We're going to be pushing that out until we get the numbers up. We're going to be sending out flyers and census information as well. And so, yeah, Matthew, that wraps me up, sir.
Well, if that's it and we don't have any further questions, Dr. Long, thank you for your time and what you guys over at Raise Your Hand Texas are doing to support public education. If there's no further questions, we'll go ahead and close this. I've recorded the webinar, so it'll be available on our YouTube page as well as our Facebook page in the near future. I will get the presentation and links from Dr. Long and sent out to the attendees today, hopefully by the end of the day, if not early tomorrow. If there's nothing else, thank you again for your time, and we'll connect soon.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
You too.